ほう、向かってくるのか。
近づかなきゃてめえをぶちのめせないんでな。
ほうほう。では十分近づくがよい。
Welcome back to the hunt, everybody, and today we shall be hunting the dragon phage itself. Stygian Zinogre. Let's do it. An interesting case scenario where I'll think that the subspecies or variant or whatever you want to call it, the Stygian Zinogre, while being a more interesting monster to fight, is also the lesser of his original. While I think that Stygian is a much more involved monster with a lot better mechanics, is also just inherently more annoying to find than the original one, which is a strange way to go about it, but let's go over it quite quickly well, I mean not quite quickly, but let's do our best to talk about it in a fairly good manner. First of all, if we're gonna go over the looks, I think the black and the reds and those whitish hues don't work too well for the Stygian Zinogre. I know! If you're an edgy 12-year-old boy, you're gonna love all that red, you're gonna love all that black, you're gonna love all that gray. I'm a blue boy. Okay? If you look at my if you look at my clothes, yeah, they're mostly like bright blues or like red or like greenish. I like really bright colors in my life. And of course I got my blacks. Like of course I got my gray shirts. But it's not what I like to wear. I like to wear bright ass colors. So I can be a happy little boy. So it's not that I don't like the coloration of the Stygian Zinogre, it's just that I just prefer the original coloration, which I could say about a lot of things specifically. But if we're talking low-rise, Stygian's into different from the original Zinogre. The original Zinogre would attract dracophage bugs to basically have a symbiotic relationship with them, while the Stygian does the same thing but with dracophage bugs instead. So it's essentially the same thing. And when it comes to little mechanics, hidden secrets, I've already talked about this during Zinogre episode, but if you weren't paying attention, during the Zinogre episode, I said that if you can manage to topple the Zinogre on, like if you can just topple or trip the Zinogre itself, you had you catching that, you could catch off the box of its back to depower the Zinogre. The same thing applies with the Stygian. So if your strategy is to decharge a monster because you don't have enough DPS to deal with the fact that you can decharge a monster, catching the bugs off of its back when it's stripped or toppled is one of the better way to deal with this, also as getting good materials for farm after the fact. When it comes to the new move kit, Stygian has a couple of new moves, and by a couple of new moves, I mean one, which is a torpedo attack that you just saw. Outside of that, there's just more slam dunks, and the only thing that's inherently much more different are usually the follow-ups and the AoE that comes out of it. You will see that in most scenarios whenever the Stygian Zinogre is fully charged and enraged, you will pulse out dracophage bugs that will shoot out dragon lightning? I don't know how else to call it. It's basically dragon lightning. And that dragon lightning is a delayed AoE attack where it will strike a selected area from the dracophage bugs after like a second, I believe, of delay or something along these lines. As you can see, these things shoot out all over the place. And that thing, the Stygian will bloody spam this thing like nobody's business. However, in most cases, it's not too bad. But when it comes to usually the slam dunks, the big heart attack, or Wo's torpedo move, he will blow that stuff everywhere, thus making the approach incredibly hard to follow through. As you saw in the opening, I basically got trapped in between two rows of dracophage bugs, and I was trying to sidestep by running away from the slam dunk. I still got it by it, and thus I got killed away. So the Stygian Zinogre has a lot of moves like this. Well, it will basically try to trap you from the dracophage bugs AoE strikes, and from there it'll try to distract you. My biggest probably how can I say this? My biggest hurdle to come across whenever I'm fighting the Stygian Zinogre, outside of the normal Zinogre, is that whenever you clutch claw the face while using the charging animation, you will realize something really, really damn fast. And that is that dragon lightning will strike across him, parallel to him, from both sides, from head to stomach to tail, and then rotate back to head to stomach to tail. So it's a pattern of head, stomach, tail, as you are seeing right now. Like, the usual punish you would do for a normal Zinogre is that you would clutch claw the head, clutch claw him to the side in front of a wall, bang him, and then enraging him to go into a straight charge process, which then again, I've talked about the loop in that episode, go watch it over there. You can't do that with the Stygian, since first of all, getting out of his charge state is actually much more complicated in the original Zinogre, and as well that wall banging can be an issue if you try to do it during the charge. The charge is still an incredible move to punish, but not necessarily to wallbang. And the reason for that is because if you clutch claw the head immediately as he starts charging, and then try to swipe away to redirect him towards a wall, you will get struck by the dragon lightning. You will get struck by the bugs, and thus getting off the clutch claw, and thus nullifying your advantage. The other thing that you should worry about, there was a counter move that the original Zinogre would do, where if you struck at a correct point in the animation, the Zinogre would reel back and then charge back up another slam attack. So an overhead slam that would pretty much go into... Oh, by the way, I love this. He went for a slam dunk and I trapped him instead. So yeah, there was this counter move where the original would just charge up, lean back, and then an overhead swipe you. What the Stygian does, and it always seems to catch me off guard, and whenever you're able to basically do a counterattack here, where you're essentially reeling him, what it will do instead is, instead of doing an overhead swipe, it will do a horizontal swipe, and thus making the move surprisingly harder to go up against. It caught me a few times while trying to hunt this thing, actually, as you can see, and the follow-ups usually follow along with that horizontal swipe, making the thing surprisingly harder to go against. And the main pattern that you will see is that you want to aim for the same thing with the Stygian than just like the original, so we're talking forelegs and head. But because your positioning matters so much and there's delayed projectiles everywhere during this fight, and it's harder to decharge the Stygian Zinogre, you have to be extremely aware of where you're going and how you're punching and weaving between the monster's attack. Because you're gonna be absolutely fumble-trucked if you don't. I've talked in the original episode about how the Electro Balls are surprisingly a hard attack to check with, and it's a really good demeanor of how you can position, because they're so hard to dodge between, like to dodge through them, high frame them. The bugs don't do this. It's very easy to dodge them, but since there's so much of them, you usually want to just out-position them. So there's this slight shift in the fight where you go from actually just... See what I mean? It's hard to actually... You need to be really good at your positioning there. So there's this slight shift in battling the Stygian from the original, where the original was mostly just a understanding the position and punishing attacks, where the Stygian is put yourself and bobbing and weaving through attacks so you can put yourself in an advantageous position. So instead of just waiting to certain positions and then just striking, you have to bob and weave your way through the Stygian way more, making it, in my mind, a much harder fight. But that's my opinion about it. Now, another very interesting part about the Stygian is the math! Yes, I know everybody hates the math, but I love it! So, here to the left, you will see the Stygian Zinogre stat. And to the right, you will see the actual original Zinogre stat. And the reason why I want both on screen right now is because that also, the charge state changes the fight quite substantially. If you look at the math, you're like, well, both of them have an average of 39. I don't see what's the issue here. Yes, you're right. But look at the stats for the Stygian when he's uncharged, when he's in base form. 55, 50, 30, 30, 50, 30, 30, and 40. When he's charged, 45, 38, 25, 50, 38, 25, and 35. It goes down. So the high risk, high reward gameplay of the original does not apply to Stygian. You have to be a lot more focused and be much more aware of knocking him as quick as possible so he can actually deal damage. So it becomes a time bomb, which is why I prefer fighting the original, by the way, because I don't like the idea that you have to knock him off of his super state in order to deal damage. It's the reason why I like fighting Safi Jiva, is because in his supercharged state, it's a high risk, high reward. The more aggressive you are during his more oppressive and enraged state, the more you're able to deal damage at the cost of putting yourself in harm's way. You can't do that with the Stygian, and I don't like it, which is why I want them both set at the same time. Now, if you look at the Zinogre, when he's completely charged up, the head downs from 20 full points in hit zone value, which is huge. Look at the neck, it goes from 60 to 38. The torso goes from 25 to 25, actually, it's not that big. The back goes from 40 to 40, the back goes from 40 to 50, which is the only one that gets higher to my knowledge. The forelegs go to 45 to 38, the hind legs 25 to 25, luckily enough, and the tail from 45 to 35, which is why I think makes the fight so interesting. Outside of that, conclusion, Stygian Zinogre, a relatively hard monster to go up against, and to be fair, I do prefer the original one. Although I still like the conceptual idea of the fight, I think it's done to a lesser extent, unfortunately. Join us tomorrow for another hunt